Hi, my name is Amrit. We've heard that IIT Madras is the best place to build. So we've come down to the Sudhan Shankar Innovation Hub. We want to meet some people. These are builders. We want to talk to them about their work and also ask them what makes IIT Madras the best place to build.
Increasingly, we are getting people with aspirations of creating startups and they're choosing areas. There are some students who say, I only want to work on this particular problem because this has startup potential. So the kind of poetry I practice is also called, what I look at it is art poetry, where rhyme and rhythm are not as important as the philosophy behind it.
So we are at the Sudhan Shankar Innovation Hub with Dr. Prabhu. Dr. Prabhu, welcome to our podcast. We are the best place to build podcast.
Yes.
And I realized in our research that I went to IIT Madras 2003 to 8 mechanical engineering with dual degree in intelligent manufacturing, and you went to the same thing, but 5 years my senior, right?
We were the inaugural batch of intelligent manufacturing.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I remember choosing my branch and I was not sure what it really meant. But can you give us an idea of what is intelligent in manufacturing back then to how it's moved? And I know that your research area is also sort of linked to that.
Yeah. So today we have this huge movement of Industry 4.0, right? Which is connected systems, networked systems, intelligent systems. Actually, this intelligent manufacturing was sort of anticipating all of that. How can we put sensors into the whole manufacturing process, getting some live feedback on information on the actual, feed parameters, cutting parameters, and so on. And how can we use that to improve and optimize the process? Also, how can we have machines that are intelligent by themselves, machines that can talk to each other? Today, a lot of this is now there on the shop floors through Industry 4.0. And I think that's what is sort of flowered over and blossomed from those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that this year, or maybe earlier this year, you won the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's the most prestigious prize for engineers or engineering researchers in India. Could you tell us a little bit about how the experience was? What is the body of work for which you were recognized?
Thank you. Thanks for the question as well. And it's a very special recognition. To me, it is a very personal feeling as well, because my father worked as a scientist in a CSIR laboratory in Hyderabad, the Indian Institute for Chemical Technology. And you know that Bhatnagar Award originally has roots in CSIR as an organization. And Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar is a founder of CSIR as well. So we grew up with stories of legends, legendary scientists who got Bhatnagar Award. In my father's office, we used to say, "Oh, he is very accomplished because he's a awardee." And I got a prize from somebody who was an awardee when I was young.
Right.
And today, seeing my name in that list feels very special personally. And you won't believe how elated and happy my father and mother are, actually. And that it is so personal in that sense. And if you look at the history of people who have received this award, people like
CN Rao.
CNR Rao, people like Abdul Kalam, people like MS Swaminathan, you see, these are actually the who's who of Indian science.
Yes.
And of course, this is actually considered as a starting point. There's a lot more to achieve from now.
Yeah.
But it is nice to feel this get this recognition. So also another reason for me is that this year I have got this under the category called technology and innovation. Right. So the kind of work I have been doing is very translational. Yes, there is some aspect of paper publishing, which as an academic I do, but I also take a lot of pride in taking these innovations to the field, whether through startups or working with the industry and so on. So this category recognizes that work, and that makes it extra special for me. Yeah.
Damn cool. The citation spoke about ultrasonic startups and science administration. And I think we will take 15 minutes to cover each. But let's start with science administration. I'm very keen to understand what does that word even mean?
So science administration is what giants like Bhabha did, Homi Jahangir Bhabha or Vikram Sarabhai, laying the foundation of the Atomic Energy Agency or laying the foundation of ISRO and so on. Of course, I'm not saying we are doing as monumental of a work, but who knows? In 50 years' time, what we have built here as the innovation hub, the CFI and Nirman may indeed achieve such proportions. But it's essentially working on mission critical, mission oriented scientific work, but giving it an administrative push. Here at CFI and Nirman, for example, what we are doing is we are nurturing the spirit of young people to be able to work on innovations, work on technology development, work on product creation, and helping them to take their ideas and dreams into practical solutions, startups, products, and so on.
Wait, hold on. We have to go from scratch on this, and you can use this and write it down for me.
Yeah.
So, what does the innovation stack at IIT Madras mean?
Yeah. So thank you for making me look like a professor, but writing on a whiteboard. Yeah. So I would say the IND stack, and beautiful that you caught on that, consists of essentially, to me, I'm not just because I'm the faculty in charge of the Center for Innovation. The CFI is at the heart of it, right? This is how I would look at it. Why you are an alumnus. I'm an alumnus as well. We know that in the 5 years that we were here, we hardly did anything practical.
Right. We didn't have CFI.
Yeah, but look around here. People building racing cars, people building hyperloop, people building sounding rockets
Yeah.
on their own for the most part. And these are interdisciplinary teams. Sometimes the hyperloop team has people from chemical engineering and ocean engineering as well, right? Coming together and actually doing these things. The Formula racing team, for example, builds everything on their own, from wheels, chassis, the motor drivers, the battery packs, the everything on their own.
It is unbelievable.
This is
When
what
I was in Insti, if I built, I mean, I remember my friend repaired his fan one day, and we were all like so
no,
proud.
no,
And these guys are building rockets, and I don't know what else.
racing cars
Yeah.
on their own. So that is, I think, to me, at the core of the transformation that has happened at IIT Madras. Now we have the venerable ICNSR, right, 50-year-old organization, which sort of provides backing and support. This is what is giving us, industry interactions. Now there are a host of support organizations here. We have the feeders, what you say. You have the TechSoc, right? You have the ESL as well, which is sort of attracting students who have a sort of entrepreneurial or making mindset, right? And then on the other hand, you have now the CFI is feeding off to what we call Nirman now, the pre-incubator. This I think in the entire country, it's a unique concept. There are very few pre-incubators around, whether it is in India or anywhere in the world, and speaks about the maturity of our ecosystem. Now we have feeders, which is the GDC, for example, right? So GDC, I would place it somewhere here. It is not feeding into Nirman. What it is doing is taking faculty research, student research, commercializing that. Now all of this is sort of leading to our innovation incubation ecosystem, IIT Madras Incubation Cell and the sector-specific incubators under them. So this is a sort of tech stack with ICSR as the basis and foundation, CFI, giving the icing on the cake, and then the
So
various.
the student flow is like this,
Yeah,
and or maybe like this,
yeah.
and the where is
The academic flow
academic flow? Yeah.
that is like this. It could go from here to here as well,
Okay.
and then it could go there as well.
Okay.
Because research can be commercialized directly from the lab,
Okay.
or increasingly, people are choosing to come to Nirman. Today, 30% of my startups at Nirman, we have 100 startups at Nirman right now, pre-incubated. They are founded by MS and PhD students.
Okay.
And that was not so traditionally. Yeah.
That is correct. You would get a PhD to become a professor or to pursue a research in a lab, but
Yeah.
not necessarily a
Create a startup or become a CTO of a startup, for example.
yeah. And in the US, of course, this is different because we know that Google founders were PhD students, and I don't know about the other AI top founders, but they must have been PhD students who are commercializing the algorithms they built or the work they did. In India, it's still maybe 10 years old that
Yeah.
we are thinking of it like this.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little more on this? If somebody joins a PhD today at IIT Madras,
Yeah.
are they already thinking of starting up? Is that even possible?
It is possible, and actually, quite a few, what do you say, next gen PhD students are thinking about this. In fact, when I'm interviewing students for PhD at that admission stage these days, they talk about the possibility for creating startups. They are not coming here now anymore for only for a training to become a professor or to join an R&D center. Increasingly, we are getting people with aspirations of creating startups, and they're choosing areas. There are some students who say, I only want to work on this particular problem because this has startup potential. Those kinds of things are happening.
That is amazing. We work a lot with students who join IIT BTech or Dual through JE, and it's the same situation there. I would say about one third or maybe even half the students are very excited about the idea that there's a huge startup culture. Um, this is a big shift because when I graduated, maybe 20-30% of my class, maybe a little more, um, maybe 40% of my class went abroad to pursue an MS. Few ended up working here. Um, I'm I must have been the second person in my class who started out, and maybe by now there are like 5% or so. And you were my senior from 5 years. So when you graduated, what was the situation?
So when we graduated, see, either we could work for government organizations like DRDO and so on, or we have TCS, the mothership of everybody who doesn't want to be in core. We had to go to TCS, or the only option was to go abroad, study for an MS or a PhD. And indeed, almost 70% of my batchmates went abroad, including me. Now, that the culture has shifted. I think it's the other way around.
Yeah.
Only 30% perhaps are going abroad at the start, and the rest are choosing to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the opportunities basket has changed quite a bit.
Absolutely. See, I have always believed, and during our time when we were students, this topic called brain drain was a big thing,
Yeah.
right? People used to discuss, oh, IITians do not get enough package, so they're not staying behind. But it is not about just about the salary. I think a lot of us here want to be challenged.
Yeah.
We want to work on exciting problems that can have deep impact. Those kinds of opportunities are now available for young people, and so they're choosing to stay back. Yeah.
Very interesting. So, and on that startup track, you are part of 4 startups formally, and you are also telling me that there are 3 more in the pipeline. Some of them are, I think, the oldest one is now 7-8 years old.
It is 9 years old today.
So, do you want to just quickly run us through the startups, and maybe we can focus on some of the work areas?
Sure. So my first startup, Planis, was created in 2015. It had its origins here in CFI. Um, the CTO of the company, Vineet, was heading the RoboSub team. They used to build automated underwater vehicles, go to the US, participate in a competition. Tanuj was part of the Robocon club. He was also the co-curricular affairs secretary of his time. And Tanuj was working with me for his finally a master's project, developing a robot for inspecting pipelines. And after he graduated, this team came together. Vineet was the one who first wanted to start up, and I called Tanuj saying, "I have a team for you." By the way, because when he stayed back for a couple of months, built another version of his robot, Reliance got very interested in that work. They said, we want a robot for inspecting tanks, and looks like this is very interesting. We'll support this. But Tanuj told me, in the absence of a team, he cannot carry on. Right. So then we found a team, and then it so happened that the team was very well known to him. Anyway, they also had a CFI background, and that's how that team came together. Today, Planis, is actually a pioneer in many ways. They are the first Indian underwater robotic startup. They are the only ones today to provide automated underwater vehicles commercially. No one else can do it in India, and they are soon going to work with the Indian Navy as well. So a lot of work is going on. They have wholly owned subsidiaries in Netherlands. They have operations in the Middle East as well. So this is how they have grown. Something that is little in the lab has become a huge enterprise
That's
now.
cool. And this idea that students in IIT can come to a lab like CFI, play around, come up with something, work with a professor, make something out of it, then build a startup, and then raise funding uh, from IC, which is here. It's amazing. And just to clarify, their work is used by um, Oil companies?
Oil and gas, which is in terms of tank inspections, which is water tanks and oil storage tanks. River crossings of road and rail bridges.
Okay.
Those are major applications because corrosion happens there. Also, dams, because there is water storage. So today, India produces almost 30% of our power through hydel sources. And dams are a major infrastructural asset for hydel companies. They can have reservoirs which are 150 meters deep. You need to inspect them. So Planis robots are used there as well.
This is very interesting. When I was reading up on the work you've done, there's a word that comes up called SHM, Structural Health Monitoring. And I was thinking that, we pump concrete in our cities, in dams, in bridges, in roads, metros, and somehow we expect them to work for, I don't know, centuries, right?
Yeah, it's the same everywhere in the world. Right, infrastructure is put up, and then you're supposed to maintain it. Aging infrastructure is a major problem anywhere in the world. And SHM is a philosophy. That is, can we monitor a structure while it is under operation? So in Planis, we have something very cool. We call it Internet of Underwater Things.
Okay.
So we have sort of pioneered the concept where we put up acoustic beacons on the base, on the sort of bed of water bodies, and then we have flybys through ROVs and AUVs. You know that internet doesn't work underwater,
Right.
so we do acoustics based communication, and then these AUVs or ROVs will come to the surface and transmit information via satellite to the base station.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and this is how we do SHM underwater.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Planis. And then,
Solinas, you have already spoken to Divanshu in your podcast.
yeah.
Very exciting company. They today are maintaining the water and sewer networks in more than half a dozen Indian cities through the Smart Cities program. They're also working on robotics for eliminating manual scavenging, a problem that is very close to my heart. Again, this is something that had roots in our lab. Divanshu was my final year master's student. We developed the HomoSap robot through the course of his dual degree project, and then that was commercialized and taken on through Solinas.
This uses,
Yeah.
the Solinas robot uses NDE, right? And I was
All our startups have an NDE connection.
okay.
So
So
we sol-
can you explain to us what is NDE? And I saw that your research area is waveguide ultrasonics. Can you just give a like a very brief understanding, because I know I'm a mechanical engineer, but it's been many years.
I'll give you the very brief understanding. If you Google up NDE, what you will see is near death experience. That's the briefest experience as you can have. But um, NDE is actually related to that. If you do not perform regular maintenance of your infrastructural assets, they can have catastrophic failures. They can cause death. They can cause loss of life. So NDE is a bunch of tools and techniques which we use to look through structures without damaging them. So historically, X-ray was the first NDE technique, and all of us are familiar with X-ray. We can do an X-ray for the tooth. If we have a fracture in the bone, we do an X-ray.
Structural damage of my rib
Exactly.
cage.
Yeah. So whatever you cannot see with your eyes, you use some techniques to look through. So that is NDE. Today, X-rays qualify, ultrasonics. We do ultrasonics to see if there is a stone in the kidney or something, right?
Yeah.
So the same bunch of tools and techniques we use for engineering structures and concrete,
Yeah.
to see inside them, to see if there is any defect that is critical in there. Yeah.
I don't know whether you already knew this, but I have a lot of kidney stone issue.
Oh, sorry.
So if I
Sorry.
did, I learned from my doctor after the nth
It's all
kidney stone
dehydration. Yeah.
that people who make kidney stones quite often are called stone makers.
Mhm.
So I'm a stone maker.
Okay.
Um,
So Planis is actually a robotics company,
Okay.
but also an ND robotics company, because they can carry our sensors to a remote location, like 100 meters down from water, and perform an ultrasonic inspection there. In fact, they have pioneered the concept of Rayleigh pulse velocimetry, which is a pulse velocimetry but implemented underwater. Underwater Schmidt hammer. There's a lot of things that they have developed. Solinas, for example, does a laser-based inspection of pipelines from the inside without causing any damage, and then you can infer the internal condition of a pipeline to that.
after speaking to Divanshu, and I've known Divanshu for a while, I sometimes, I mean, their technology or the technology that you guys have developed is so useful and so relevant right now, because our cities are creaking and uh, there's water everywhere. If it rains even for half a day, everything is jammed and there are leaks everywhere. So I think That's very interesting. I wish that more smart cities would pick up Solinas and
Yeah.
implement them faster than.
Yeah.
And I hope that there's a situation where Solinas literally puts up its hands and says, "We can't deliver that this fast." Mm. I read up about Zyma. Zyma is not. Zyma is little different, right?
It's a sensors company. It's in an area where I am a PhD. Professor Krishnan, our co-founder, has a PhD. And the CEO of the company also has his PhD with us in our lab. Nishant is our PhD student as well. So there, we work on what we call as fiber acoustics. You're very familiar with fiber optics.
Yeah.
Right? We send light through a little thin wire, which is a glass wire. We do something similar. We send sound through a wire. And then this wire can be very cheap. It can be inexpensive. It can have properties. For example, we can even use a ceramic as a wire, right? We call this a wave guide, something that takes a wave to a remote location. So if you want to monitor a process which is high temperature, for example, a smelting process, copper ore refining, aluminum refining, glass vitrification, nuclear reactors. So their temperatures can be as high as 1500 degrees centigrade. No other technique can work. Our technique is we just put a ceramic in, something that has a melting point higher than that. We send a wave through it. And then we can infer something remotely over there, which is typically temperature or viscosity or rheology and so on. This way is very deep tech and something we are very proud about because we have commercialized a core science
Yeah.
into a product. And today, all process industries across oil and gas, mining and minerals, refining, petrochemicals are all using this solution. Paints, emulsifiers, lubricants, they're all using this solution.
This is damn cool. As you're saying this, I'm thinking your first two startup had BTech co-founders. Your next startup had PhD co-founders. How does this equation? Because from a startup point of view, startup life is a grind. Like it's a 24-hour, 7 day. Like you can't sleep, you can't, and you're constantly worrying about hiring, product, sales, everything, right? So how does the your academic life and your startup life sort of merge? How does that work at all?
Yeah, so it's a beautiful question. So they come together in a very natural way because in our lab, we work with the industry very closely. We are close to the entire oil and gas spectrum, I would say. We're close to nuclear industry, we're close to defense, we're close to aerospace and so on. So we have an access to a ready-made set of problem statements from the industry. And they're all looking for solutions. Our startups are the solution deliverers. Our lab comes in between because we are the ones who are making the TRL 1 to 3 kind of innovation. So you are familiar with technology readiness level,
Yes.
right? So we
6 is where you are commercial.
9 is
9
yeah,
is
6 to 9. 9
let
is field
hold on,
deployment.
hold on. Let's sorry,
Yeah.
write this down.
So the TRL spectrum. So TRL 3 is actually proof of concept. Um,
That is
TRL
technology readiness
readiness
level.
level. 4 to 7 is some kind of 4 to 6 is mock-up
Okay.
studies. And then 7 to 9 is field studies, right? Approximately.
Okay.
So
Traditionally, an academic institute in IIT would be involved in 1, 2, 3.
1 to 3.
That's it.
That's
And
it.
we stop.
We stop there
Yeah.
because funding dries up, your excitement dries up because there's nothing new that happens from then on.
Yeah.
It's more of tailoring it to the field,
Yeah.
really. And you will not get even IPs for this work.
Yeah.
So this is the value of death typically. So for us, therefore, it is very natural. The startups are looking for problem statements. And we are the intermediary who brings those problem statements. The industry also needs deep solutions. So Zyma solutions, for example, were developed over many, many years. And the original, interest came from Tata Steel. Although we have still not solved it because steel is 1800 degrees centigrade. We still do not have a material that takes those melting points. We are still researching on that. But we can do copper, aluminium, and all that today. Tata also has copper smelters, refineries. Vedanta has it, and so on. So we do that. So solving a problem which is industrially oriented is what we are specializing in. And our startups then become our natural partners, therefore. We look at it as an integrated continuum, as a solution provider. We go very deep. Startup may not have the bandwidth for that. But if you are to invest in R&D, it is going to cost you a lot. Our lab has the equipment, the infrastructure, the research facilities, and the staff base. Today, our lab CNDE has over 100 staff members. 30 PhD, 30 masters, more than 50 to 60 project staff. So this entire thing is the providing the R&D base and the IP base. And the startup comes in as a commercialization arm of such. And therefore, it's a natural sort of coming together of
The lab you mentioned, CNDE, is
Center for Non-Destructive Evaluation.
which I think the head is Professor Balasubramanian.
That's right. Yeah.
I have actually sat in his class, and I think you've also sat in his
Yes,
class.
I have. Yeah.
So it's amazing. Like it's a long loop back, right?
Yeah.
Krishnan Balasubramanian, I remember he was very popular for his NDE class even back then.
Yeah.
And I think the video recording of classes had just started.
Yeah.
At our time, and I've sat in his classes where there's a bunch of cameras recording. Amazing professor.
Yeah.
And just going back to that lab, CNDE, right?
Yes.
There are a bunch of startups that have come out from CNDE. Is it just Solinas, Planis, Zyma, or there?
So we have Detect, we have Dhwani. Dhwani was the original startup from our lab. It is now 3 companies. There is one that is doing AI in NDE. There is one that is doing bespoke solutions. And there is one that is developing standard inspection solutions. So that is 3 companies. Then we have Maximal Labs, which is into shutdown management in oil and gas. Then we have Detect Technologies, which started with pipeline inspection with SHM sensors. They went on into drone inspections. Now they are into occupational health using drones and cameras as such. And that's a very highly valued company from our lab. And then we have Plenome, which has just come out, which is into blockchain for healthcare. That's our first entry into healthcare space.
Also, like this marks a change in your interest areas.
Yes.
Because now it's gone from sensors to robotics to
Data.
blockchain.
That's right. Yeah. So that progression has been happening. See, it first started with Planis and Solinas. Planis used to send robots underwater and they used to get gigabytes of data. And then we were left with wondering how do we process all of this? We have video information, we have video recordings of underwater settings. Then we must have something by which we can summarize these videos. Same happens with Solinas. They send robots into pipes and they get terabytes of data back. And we need to process all of it. In Planis, in the beginning, we used to do this manually. It used to take us a week to 10 days, 5 people just poring over this information, finding out what is the feature and so on. Today, we use AI. AI summarizes and analyzes everything. We have custom developed AI algorithms for all of this. It is while doing this and while doing Zyma work where we put sensors on board in the plant, and then plant managers are starting to wonder, what about vulnerabilities here? Do you think these sensors could be points of attack? Right, you're transmitting information from our plant to a remote station. Can they be intercepted over there? That's how I started getting into cybersecurity.
Okay.
And data security, data protection, and so on. And analytics is part of the whole thing.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Now that you mentioned AI and blockchain, I'm thinking, maybe at a school level or even in general in public, when people think of AI, they think of LLMs, or they think of robots, or they think of like what we see in the movies. But what I have known from talking to so many professors and talking to so many startups, that AI is sort of like improving the work in each and every field. So this is interesting. Like, can you tell me a little bit more about the blockchain and AI work that is done? And maybe we can segue into the startup.
Yeah. So today I firmly believe that AI, as the promise of AI cannot be unlocked without blockchain on the back end. In the sense that blockchain is what is going to protect the fidelity of the data. For AI to work, you should be sure that the data that you're using is legit, it's kosher, right? It has not been tampered with. It is authentic. And blockchain is what is going to give you that. The second thing that is very important for AI is anonymization. Because today all of us care about privacy. A lot of information is there but with personal identifier. Banks are identifying so much of your information, my information. When we pay through credit cards, all of this information is accredited at somewhere, right? Hospitals generate a lot of data as well. How do we make sure that the information about the end customer or end stakeholder is not there in the data that we use for analytics? And that's where blockchain comes in naturally. You store information in such a way that you keep something safe and some things that can be out on the chain as such. And that's what this comes in. So my work into healthcare space started off sort of during the COVID pandemic. We all were very familiar with how people were struggling to take their information across geographies. You do a test in one laboratory in one state, you cannot cross the borders and go to another place. You have to do a COVID test again in that place, even if it is just in 24 hours. So we started looking at medical data interoperability in a very big way in those days. And that's what has led to Plenome today, which is trying to look at data in the medical space from a cybersecurity angle, providing interoperability as a side effect.
Can I ask you a very silly question here? Does somebody come and tell you, hey, this is not mechanical engineering? Don't do this. Or leave it to the, I
It
don't
is
know.
not silly at all, right? So we have debated a lot in IIT Madras in trying to create a general engineering discipline, because none of us today are, practitioners of our core disciplines anymore. Every one of us works cross discipline, and especially those of us like working in fields like NDE. NDE to start with was never one discipline. Yes, there is mechanical engineering. Ultrasonics is all stress analysis ultimately. There is stress waves. But you have electronics, the instrumentation, then you have signal processing. So there is always, an element of AI in ultrasonics. And I have seen Professor Krishnan published a paper in 1998 talking about artificial neural networks for inferring material properties of wood using ultrasonic interrogation. So we have always been cross-disciplinary in some sense. Now this has gotten accentuated with the democratization of computer science.
Fair enough. I mean, this year's physics and
Absolutely. Yeah.
chemistry Nobel went
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
co-went.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody is up in arms, like the physics
We are
warriors.
very excited, to say the least. Yeah.
Um, I and also like on this topic, I understand that there's a lot of debate in IIT Madras also, but when we talk to parents or JE students, we keep trying to tell everyone that your discipline is like, I don't know if it matters anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All I would say is that it is discipline does matter. In the way I would say is that you have domain expertise in something. It's always good to have expertise in one area. Going very deep in something is very good. But when you go very deep, I found that at the foundation, at the root, it's all the same. So meaning all branches unite in some level, at some meta level, right? And that's the depth to which you must go, in which everything unites and becomes one. And perhaps data sciences and AI are doing that. We are looking at everything as data ultimately, everything as information. We're looking at patterns in places where we wouldn't be looking for patterns.
fair enough. Statistics, pattern recognition, systems thinking,
Absolutely.
these are quite common.
Yeah.
Hmm. So I also read that this the blockchain club at IIT Madras did a blockchain election. I have zero idea what that means. Can you take me through it and explain what was done?
Thanks for asking that. So, in fact, I was the faculty in charge for this club for many years, what we call a WebOps and Blockchain Club. These two clubs merged and I took over at that time. And they were doing a bunch of very cool projects, because blockchain is a way of bringing trust in any system. And trust is lacking whenever you have two, three parties coming together requiring verification, right? And these can be, for example, in copyright issues, what is protected through IP, what is done in metering, water metering, electricity metering, and so on. And then the mother of all problems, which is elections. So you require a neutral agency like an election commission to certify that somebody authentic has cast their vote. It's a huge gargantuan exercise. You maintain this huge body, you have army, you have CRPF, all to just ensure that, you know, I am casting my vote only. I'm not casting anybody else's vote
And that it has been preserved till the point of
till
counting.
the point of counting. What we have done, and it's very cool, the students have done, is that the blockchain club developed a software which has a simple system of authentication. Of course, that can be improved later. We just use student ID cards to authenticate the voter. And then we have a software that runs on a system of distributed nodes. And elections are conducted on that. Counting is done on that. Results are also announced on that. We have done it in 3 cycles now. 3 times this has happened. The first time the club did it. Now, more recently, our startup Plenome has done it 2 times.
Okay, nice. This
And we shouldn't
again
be,
and again, this thing keeps
yeah,
coming up that there are students who are playing around with something, some interest area, and then it moves to a research area, and then it moves to a entrepreneurial area.
yeah. And that's what in IIT Madras we are very proud about now. We are bridging that gap between fundamental, applied, and the products based research. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think we've spoken a lot. Let's just go back a little bit. I'm interested in knowing a little bit more about you how, as a student, and I know that you've sent us some pictures. Let me figure out how to open them. Did you have a nickname?
I was called Gandhi in IIT. Yeah.
Okay.
It's because I used to go to Tirupati very often, get my head shamed. And then I used to wear circular glasses. So,
For those who are unaware, can you just tell us about the nickname culture at IIT Madras?
yeah, so you are an alumnus as well. So, you know that many of us know people only by our nicknames, right?
Yeah.
So, my batchmates don't know me as Prabhu, they know me as Gandhi
Okay.
as such. And we all get a sort of second name when we come
Renamed.
renamed at IIT. And that's IIT's way of owning us, I think,
Yeah.
right? So, there's also the slang that we learn here and it becomes part of our lives.
Yeah.
Even today, I think when you connect with your batchmates,
Yeah.
you talk, you call them by their nicknames and you speak in the IIT slang.
Yeah. In fact,
Hey, macha, budar ke. So,
exactly. And also, there are cases where somebody will ask, "What is his real name?" And you won't know.
we won't know. Yeah.
So, some pictures from your Insta time. Do you want to just
Yeah, so this was me in this is Surya, who I just spoke to you about. I think this may have been either in my hostel room or his hostel room. Now I can't remember. Yeah. So the first picture is so this is how IIT people bond together, right? Hari was my junior in mechanical engineering. He was also part of the Vivekananda study circle where I was a senior. He had gone to US for his PhD. I went to US for a conference, but I went, met him, and stayed with him. And this used to happen for a good 10 years when I go to US. In whichever city I used to go, I used to find my batchmates, go meet them and spend time with them. So this is one of those visits in the US.
The alumni sort of network or the bond exists even beyond, even if you are not met on campus. It's like a warm
That's right.
handshake waiting for you.
Yeah, always. Yeah. And we are very grateful and proud of that. Yeah.
And you mentioned the Vivekananda Study Circle. Do you want to just talk about it? I think there's a picture here from there, right?
All of these actually are pictures of my study circle friends. I think you asked me for photos. I just looked for groups in which there would be photos, and these are some. This is all of us going together to Calcutta and to Belur Mutt. So we did it in the final year before we graduated. It was a trip that is very memorable, and we continue to reminisce on that. So these are photos from that. Can you recognize me in this photo?
I let me try. Uh, I cannot. Is this you?
Yeah, that's me.
Ah,
Yeah,
I want to also. This is interesting. Vivekananda Study Circle was there when I was in school. I think it's still there.
it's still there. Yeah.
Is Professor Devdas Menon still heading it?
No.
Okay.
The faculty advisors have changed.
Have
Today
changed.
is Uday Kankoje is the faculty mentor. Yeah.
It's interesting how students or the general public thinks of IIT folks from IIT as this like ruthless, cruel, I don't know, evil. I don't know what they think. But there is a lot of spiritual discussion that happens on campus. And I think
Yeah.
Vivekananda Study Circle has been one of the longest serving
I
capitalists.
think the longest. Yeah.
Do you want to just tell us
Yeah.
what the study circle does and how it helps students?
Yeah. The study circle is a way for students to understand Indian and Hindu philosophy in depth. So a lot of us come from very secular backgrounds in the sense that we have no introduction to our roots, right? Our schools, our colleges all convey knowledge which is very impersonal. It's knowledge, but then there's no connection to our roots. Study Circle was formed as an effort for us to connect back into those roots. And this was especially acute in the years when we joined the institute because there was no internet in those days. There was no information.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff that is, that is known today was just not known because it's not there in the textbooks.
Yeah.
Right. So there is an official version of Indian history, which is what we knew. But we should always, at IIT Madras, in fact, there was a course on history. And that's when we learned that there must always be multiple narratives
Yeah.
about any event. Leave the conclusion to the.
I remember this course. Is this the course by Dilip?
Yes, Dilip
Oh
Bhega.
my God, that's such a good,
Brilliant course, was it?
so
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
And for those who know him, he was also blind. So
He
it
was
was
like, yeah,
incredible to, he became blind over time.
yeah.
It is incredible to sit in that man's lecture and just go through his class.
And what an eye opener it was,
Yeah.
right? It was like bringing into you the idea that history must be written from first person, no, person understanding. You must go to the source and understand, not look at third person sources and stuff like
I
that.
remember him saying that a lot of British expansion in India has to do with the stock market price of the Indian Railways at the London Stock Exchange.
Yes.
I'm thinking, oh,
But
that makes sense.
yeah, he was the one who told us that, in fact, it was Indian bankers who bankrolled the East India Company.
Yeah.
So the Jagat Sheth family and so on, they gave the money for the Battle of Plassey, actually.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't remember that day.
Stuff like that.
I,
Yeah.
I remember him saying that Gandhi, one of Gandhi's major contributions to India was that he actually went to every village and taught them how to do sanitation systems in their village. And I'm thinking, huh, was like, yeah, who else will do it? Oh, wait, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's just like the really light bulb moments, but it's nice. Like,
So through the study circle, I got to read some of those foundational texts, whether it is Gita or the Upanishads or Sanskrit literature, Ramayana, and so on. I mean, a lot of who I am today is, of course, the foundation at home, but also what I got through the study circle, and uh, understanding the core of who we are. Essentially, that's the quest for Indian philosophy, anyway. Yeah.
so Professor, in in your LinkedIn bio, it says poet. It says innovator, blah 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 blah. Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, etc. etc. 7 startups, and then it says poetry.
Yeah.
So, would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I usually don't talk about it because it's a different part of my life. I even write under a different name. That's why perhaps you don't see anything in with this name. But to me, everything I do is poetry. Poetry is about finding beauty in things. It, it's about literally beauty in words. But to me, it's about finding beauty in everything we do. In fact, it's the same quest, I suppose. See, I'll get a little bit philosophical. We spoke about study circle, Hindu philosophy, and so on. Right? In our philosophy, we say that the ultimate reality is Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram.
Mm.
That is, it is true, it is auspicious, it is Shivam, but it is also beautiful, the Sundaram. So if you remove Sundaram out of it, the true and auspicious do not make sense to us. To us, all three are together. It has to be beautiful as well. It has to be auspicious, and then therefore it is the truth. How do you recognize the truth? No, that is this. So a lot of things come together. I was called Gandhi not just because of all of this also. I loved Satyagraha and the whole philosophy behind it. Finding the truth for oneself. In some sense, I think everything I'm doing is that. Finding the fundamental truths of the nature, trying to apply them in a way that finds auspiciousness and goodness for society. And so the kind of poetry I practice is also called, what I look at it is this art poetry, where rhyme and rhythm are not as important as the philosophy behind it. So I do surrealistic poetry, I do magical realism in poetry and stuff like that. We'll take another day, maybe another
Okay,
podcast on my poetry.
done,
Yeah,
done. And maybe just as a teaser to the viewer, maybe we can drop a little bit of link hint that this is coming up.
sure. Yeah,
Amazing. I can't believe you've gone through all this. We started with your father, who was a professor at a research lab,
scientist. Yeah,
scientist at a central government research lab, all the way to you. Why did he choose IIT Madras?
I guess it was because my friends were here.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice. And I remember you said you chose mechanical at IIT Madras.
yeah. My dad was a mechanical engineer, so
Okay.
that's why I wanted to be a mechanical engineer. Yeah.
Okay. I think IIT Madras Mechanical Engineering Department is really large. I remember that the departments were spread across, and I think it's still.
It's still the same. Yeah, we have 13 labs. Yeah.
Um, you went abroad. Most of your class did, and then you were back. Your research areas are ultrasonics, robotics, moving to data science. Over that period, you co-founded 4 startups, 3 more in the pipeline. Do you want to talk about them also?
Yeah. So I've spoken about Plenome. We are into healthcare management using blockchain. Very exciting startup. As we speak, we are trying to do some stuff for the state and for the country as well. We're trying to develop information management systems for the entire state. Let's see. Let's pray that it happens. right? So, and there's a interface between data and AI. And this is the space in which I'm getting into more and more now, right? And also because of the scalability of the whole thing, I suppose. Now, AI has come up in a very big way across the world. It is impacting every field, as you said. And there is huge excitement in Indian government, whether it's the state government or the central government, everybody. So one of the more recent startups of mine is trying to develop AI-based visual language models for assisting 3D printing. Hmm. Okay. So can we send a CAD file, and then now there is an AI model, just by seeing the CAD file, it'll sort of recognize what it is, and then it'll start trying to give you the materials that you must choose from. This company is called Matterize, created by this CFI student head of last year. He just graduated. He was head of the 3D printing club.
Can I ask you a question here?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a little bit of pressure on students to start up now?
May not be. I think it is still a fringe movement, to be honest.
Okay.
And we really want to mainstream it. See, CFI has been there for 17 years. It has taken Sarthak after 17 years to create one startup. The vast majority of the CFI students do not start up.
Right, that's correct.
So I don't think there is that kind of pressure, but yes, there is excitement, there is interest. Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So
And
that is Matterize. Then we have a startup, another startup from our lab called Zeroscape, that is into AR and VR. Right. So a lot of what we did in Planet showed us that we need to represent things in a realistic manner. Now, if you create inspect a tank, for example, it is useless to create a PDF report for it. Right. Planet itself is now developing representations which are in augmented reality.
all right.
Detect pioneered it, Planet took it. Now we have a company that is actually trying to generalize this.
Right.
So whether it's for real estate, whether it's for jewelry, whether it's for food, logistics, travel, we're trying to create augmented reality models. We're trying to create a marketplace for AR.
Nice.
So that's this company Zero. I've spoken about Matterize. There is another company called Botforge Labs, just incubated, right? That is trying to build foundational models for robots, for pick and place robots, right?
I mean, I'm staggered by the amount of work that you've done and how confidently and eloquently you're speaking about all this. Does it get exhausting
Never,
or like does
never,
it get overwhelming?
never. So it's just inspires us more and more. A couple of more are coming as well. TerraClimb is trying to build an ML-based water metering system. So very cool solution. This young man is actually not an engineer. He's an economist. He was studying in Madras School of Economics. His dad introduced me to him. I was first reluctant to meet him because there's a lot of people who want to meet me. One day I just picked up a phone and spoke to him. And what he said in few minutes just blew my mind. I said, come down, I'm going to meet you tomorrow. So he was, measuring flow with accelerometers. So he was saying that I have an ML model, and by looking at what is the output of an accelerometer, I can predict the flow. So he didn't know the physics of it. So we pinned it down. We said that, look, there is turbulence in flow that is related to the velocity because the Reynolds number is related to the velocity. You're measuring the Reynolds number actually, and that's how you're measuring the flow. So we pinned it down. Now we are deepening the science behind it.
Interesting.
So
We have been saying to everyone we meet that IIT Madras is now the best place to build, and this podcast is called the best place to build. So I want to ask you in general, from all your experience, what makes it so? Like, why should somebody believe us?
I think it is this tech stack that I wrote for you, right? Even the other
Yes.
day, I think the guy who is behind I am Ahmedabad fund called Kunal Upadhyay and his friend Pranay had come in, and they were asking, is there a template? Can we replicate this elsewhere? So to that, I was saying that perhaps there is, one, extensive industry interactions,
Yeah.
right? Second thing is a student culture of making. And the third is a culture of starting up. We have all three here. Chennai is a booming industrial town. We have manufacturing here, we have shipping, we have logistics, we have construction, real estate, we have jewelry. All of that is here,
Yeah.
right? So industry interactions happen in a very much. We have the atomic energy establishment, IGCAR close by.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have space as well, Kulashekarapuram. So all these things are here.
Industrial interactions, making culture, and what was the last thing you said?
A culture of starting up.
Mm.
Right.
It's not just making for the making of it, but actually commercializing it and going through the grind. And
Yeah. Look at the exciting startups that are coming from our ecosystem. Agnikul Cosmos,
Yeah.
world's first 3D printed, sounding rockets. We have Galaxy, space-based telemetry. We have Aether Electric, which is
Yeah.
India's first electric bike company. Aether is truly an IIT Madras incubation cell story.
Yeah. They were right here.
They were right here. They were the founders of Raftar
Yeah.
team. We have Modulus Housing, a very exciting company. They can build an entire 2,000 bed wing of a hospital in 1 week.
Yeah. And this is not new. Like industrial interaction is ICSI
CNSR,
50
50
years.
years. Yeah.
And CFI is now
17 years,
17
2007.
years.
Nirman is just 9 years,
Yeah. And maybe
2014.
the startup culture is like, again, maybe 10 years old.
20 years. You have to go back to Tenet from Professor Junjunwala,
Yeah, fair enough.
right?
Professor Jun is like the OG.
So you have the Tenet lab, and then you have the RTBI, and then the incubation
Oh, yeah.
cell. Yeah. So that's
Yeah, IC is 20 years old.
yeah.
Correct. Thank you so much for this. Lots to learn and lots to make notes of. Okay, that was great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah.